In the face of US President's ambitions to take control of Greenland, France has become the first EU country to open a consulate in Nuuk. A high-profile Russian general and military intelligence official, Vladimir Alexeyev, has been shot several times in Moscow.
Oman mediated indirect talks between Iran and the United States over Tehran's nuclear program.
TikTok's addictive design breaches EU's Digital Services Act and fails to adequately protect users, the European Commission said in preliminary findings.
Portugal's government is extending a state of emergency until the end of next week as unprecedented floods continue to cause destruction across the country.
In the face of US President Donald Trump's ambitions to take control of Greenland, France has become the first EU country to open a consulate general in Nuuk. New French Consul General Jean-Noël Poirier is tasked with deepening political, economic and cultural ties with Greenland. Poirier says France aims to better listen to Greenlanders.
Notre appui est en premier lieu un appui politique et une action de mobilisation aussi de l'Union européenne, de nos partenaires européens, pour que nous présentions un visage uni face aux ambitions américaines.
The French Consul General confirmed military cooperation is ongoing and will continue. US President Donald Trump has previously claimed a US control of Greenland was necessary for his country's security.
We need it for international security.
A high-profile Russian general and military intelligence official has been shot several times by an unidentified gunman in Moscow on Friday. Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev was immediately taken to hospital after the attack in a residential building on the northwestern outskirts of the capital. According to the reports, the assailant fled the scene. Alexeyev's condition is unknown at this time, but he is said to have survived the shooting, according to Russian media reports. Alexeyev is the first deputy head of the main directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, the GRU. He has been the GRU number 2 since 2011. Alexeyev has also been accused by the UK and the EU of orchestrating the Novichok chemical weapons attack in Salisbury in 2018 that targeted Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter.
Oman mediated indirect talks on Friday between Iran and the United States over Tehran's nuclear program. The first such encounter since negotiations stalled after the U.S. conducted strikes on Iran's nuclear sites during Israel's 12-day conflict against the Islamic Republic last June. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff met separately with Oman's foreign minister at a palace on the outskirts of the capital, Muscat. The meeting also came just weeks after a wave of anti-government protests across Iran, during which the U.S. threatened military action.
The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world.
The scope of the negotiations remains unclear, and there had been tensions in the run-up to the talks over whether the meeting should also address Tehran's support of proxies and its ballistic missile programs, two U.S. concerns that Iran resisted. With the American threats of military action still looming, the United States has maneuvered a naval group led by aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln into the region, while Iran has repeatedly vowed it will hit back at U.S. bases if attacked.
Iran and the United States hold indirect talks over Tehran's nuclear program in Oman on Friday. Former commanding general of U.S. Army Europe, Ben Hodges, told Euronews he doesn't expect anything of real significance to come out of the talks.
The Iranians are playing the game. They see that the U.S. president really does not want to do anything, and also that the Americans have not thought through what comes after a potential strike. I mean, we're good at the strike part, but we're not very good traditionally at figuring out what comes after that.
Although the US have built up capacity in the region, its regional allies are pushing against a strike as they would suffer from some of the Iranian retaliation, he says. He adds he is opposed to sending boots on the ground.
The president and his administration have not prepared the American people for another war. I mean, he campaigned on no never-ending wars, and in fact, the idea of going into Iran with troops would be in my view, would be a disaster. I mean, you're talking about a very large country, and for what purpose?
Previous rounds of meetings turned to ash following Israel's launch of a 12-day war against Iran back in June.
TikTok's addictive design breaches EU's Digital Services Act and fails to adequately protect users, the European Commission said Friday in preliminary findings. TikTok reaches 170 million users in the European Union. Most of these are children, said the Commission, adding that the video app relies on addictive features such as infinite scroll, which continuously feeds users new content every time they refresh their screen.
TikTok is by far the most used platform after midnight by children between 13 and 18. 7% of children between 12 and 15 spend between 4 and 5 hours daily on TikTok. These statistics are extremely alarming. Why is all of this happening? Because TikTok offers infinite scrolling, autoplay, push notifications, and highly personalized recommender systems.
In an email, TikTok said the Commission's preliminary findings present a categorically false and entirely meritless depiction of the platform. The findings are preliminary, meaning no fines or penalties have been imposed yet, and the investigation is ongoing.
Portugal's government is extending a state of emergency until the end of next week as unprecedented floods continue to cause destruction across the country. Prime Minister Luís Montenegro announced that several major state-funded infrastructure projects are being suspended in order to redeploy workers to flood protection and damage control efforts.
Portugal enfrenta desde o dia 28 uma catástrofe sem precedente e ao impacto dessa tempestade junta-se agora uma outra, também com registro histórico comparável em termos de pluviosidade a tempos já muito passados. Por isso, esta é uma oportunidade para nós mostrarmos toda a nossa capacidade, para mostrarmos a capacidade de Portugal e a capacidade dos portugueses. Esta é uma crise devastadora, é uma crise que vai impor processo de recuperação que será longo.
Portugal's National Civil Protection Authority has ordered evacuations of towns along the Tagus River, which flows into the Atlantic Ocean near Lisbon. The torrential rains have caused its riverbanks to double and overflow. The Sado and Lixo rivers have also overflown, particularly affecting the municipalities of Alcácer do Sal and Leiria. Some have called for a high-stakes presidential election on Sunday to be postponed, but officials announced it will go ahead as planned.
Thousands from the Romanian education system, dissatisfied with the austerity measures adopted by the government in the education sector, have taken to the streets in protest. The demonstration comes as the coalition government led by Prime Minister Ilie Bolojan approved 2 packages of austerity measures to reduce the budget deficit as part of reforms. The measure specifically places a 10% cut on the salary fund of public institutions. Teachers have threatened to go on a general strike if the austerity measures are implemented by the government.
Deja au fost reduse fondurile alocate Ministerului Educației cu 600 de milioane de lei. deja sunt aplicate. Pentru asta am ieșit în piață ca acel pachet de austeritate, pachetul 3, să nu poată fi pus în practică de guvernul Bolojan.
Lipsa finanțării educației, continuă tăierile la educație, deși pentru a avea un viitor țara asta trebuie mai mulți bani băgați în educație. Niciodată nu au fost primiți banii care trebuie, se insistă cu tăierile la noi, cu reducerile de cheltuieli.
Învățământul superior, alături de preuniversitar, anul trecut a făcut creșterea normei, a luat niște măsuri și acum vine și spune că ăla e egal cu 0 și trebuie făcut din nou 10%.
Demonstrators argue that the new decisions will affect the working conditions in schools and universities. The situation has also prompted conversations and comparisons with Ukraine, where the budget allocation for education has been increased.
Dacă o țară în război crește salariile profesorilor și bursele studenților, ce explicație poate avea oricare altă țară care nu este în război? O țară care înțelege că în cel mai complicat moment al existenței sale are nevoie să investească în cei care pot scoate țara din situația în care se află. Ce explicație putem avea când le spunem oamenilor că de la cei care produc cu adevărat cunoaștere sau fac bine oamenilor, trebuie să tăiem?
Universitățile sunt generatoare de venituri proprii, dincolo de taxele de școlarizare. În momentul în care și aceste venituri proprii ale universității din diferite surse vor fi blocate în a fi utilizate inclusiv pentru cheltuieli salariale, și atunci presiunea va fi ulterior exclusiv pe bugetul de stat și, în lipsa resurselor financiare, va fi tot mai greu de finanțat educația.
3 trade union associations from the education sector are expected to announce whether there will be a strike in March or June later this month.
Additionally, education unions have launched a petition campaign for a citizens' legislative initiative. The effort aims to repeal what the unions describe as anti-education measures adopted by the government. For the proposal to be submitted to the parliament, it requires at least 100,000 signatures. For Euronews Romania, Silviu Jugaru.